I was 19 the day I learned that the most dangerous person in a column isn't always the one carrying the most rifle, and that you can serve beside someone for 3 weeks and not see them at all. Her name was Marsh, Sergeant First Class Lena Marsh, though the only time I heard her full rank said out loud in those first weeks was when she signed for the truck. To the rest of us she was the meat wagon driver, and that was the whole of her in our heads. She drove the casualty evacuation vehicle at the tail of the column, an up-armored beast we called the box, and her job, as far as we understood it, was to wait at the rear with the medics and haul out whoever got hit. The shooting was for the infantry. The driving was for her. I rode in the back of the box because I was new and nobody knew where else to put me. First deployment, 3 weeks in country, still learning which end of the day the heat came from. So I sat behind her seat and watched the back of her head for hours and decided, the way a 19-year-old decides things, that I had her figured out. She didn't talk much. She kept her kit laid out a particular way, every pouch in the same place, every strap cut and resewn so nothing dangled, her plate carrier worn high and tight like it was part of her ribs. Her rifle stayed in the rack by her door, and I never once saw her clean it where anyone could watch, but it was clean. I checked the way a bored kid checks things. The bolt was wet with just enough oil. The optic was zeroed and the lens caps were the flip kind, not the rubber bands the rest of us used. Little things, I noticed them and didn't understand what I was noticing. The men of the infantry platoon we supported barely noticed her at all. They had their own world and she was outside it. Their platoon sergeant was a man named Mackie Broad, weathered, 22 years in, with a voice that carried across a motor pool without effort and a habit of deciding things were simple. To Mackie, the column had shooters and it had support, and the support stayed out of the way. He said it to her face once the second week when she stood at the edge of a briefing. "You don't need this part, Sergeant," he told her, not unkindly, the way you'd shoo a dog off a porch. "Meat wagon stays with the trucks, you're not in the stack." A couple of the younger guys grinned. I think I grinned. She didn't answer. She just looked at the map a second longer than he expected, the way you look at something you intend to remember, and then she stepped back. That was the shape of it. That was who she was to us, the driver. The mission that broke all of it apart was supposed to be simple, which is the word that should make any old soldier's neck go cold. A coalition relief element had a forward position pinned at the far edge of the Sable Quarter, a warren of mud brick and concrete in the old heart of Cabrin, alleys so narrow in places that two men couldn't walk abreast, roofs close enough to step between. Our column would push in, link up, and pull them out, in and out before dark. Lieutenant Pell, our platoon leader, called it a milk run in front of the formation, and the men laughed because that's what men do before they go somewhere bad. I remember the route brief because of what Marsh did at the end of it. Pell traced the line on the map with a pen, straight in along the main market road, the reel they called it, a thoroughfare that ran like a crooked spine through the quarter, then a hard turn into the alleys to the relief position. The whole thing depended on the column staying together along the reel, because once you turned off it you were in the warren, and in the warren a column wasn't a column anymore. It was a string of vehicles in single file with no room to turn around. When Pell finished, Marsh spoke. It was the first full sentence I'd heard out of her in front of the platoon. "The reel's a funnel," she said, quiet, not arguing, just laying it down. "If they want us, they let us all the way in, then they drop something across the mouth behind us and something across the throat ahead, and they shoot down into a road we can't leave. I'd put the column in by 2 routes and meet at the position. Or I'd walk a foot element along the roofs first and own the high ground before any wheels roll." The tent went quiet for a second. Mackie filled it. "Noted," he said in the voice that means the opposite. "We don't have the people to split, and we're not walking the roofs of the Sable Quarter in daylight to make a meat wagon driver feel better about a milk run. Stay with your truck, Sergeant. Drive when I tell you to drive." He turned back to the map. "Anything from somebody in the stack." Nobody had anything. The brief ended. Marsh folded the corner of her own map down. She'd drawn the funnel on it, 2 little marks at the mouth and the throat of the reel, and she put it in the chest pocket where the rest of us kept cigarettes or pictures. I saw that too and didn't understand it. We rolled at noon, into the worst heat, into the quarter. For the first 10 minutes it was nothing. Kids on the rooftops, shutters banging closed ahead of us, the ordinary held breath of a place that knows soldiers are coming through. The reel narrowed the way she'd said it would. The buildings leaned in. The light went gray between the walls even at noon. I had my hand on the door of the box and my eyes on the slot of sky overhead, and I remember thinking the rooftops were very close, and that there were a great many windows, and that all of them were dark. The throat of the reel was a place where the road kinked left around an old stone cistern. We were almost through it when the world came apart. I won't pretend I understood the first 30 seconds. There was a sound that wasn't a sound so much as a hand on the chest, and the lead vehicle stopped being a vehicle, and then everything was noise. A flat tearing roar from the rooftops on both sides, the snap of rounds going past too fast to count, the deeper cough of something heavier walling off the road ahead of us. And behind us, faint under all of it, another crump, and I turned and saw smoke boiling up across the mouth of the reel where we'd come in. The mouth and the throat, exactly where her two little pen marks had been. The column wasn't a column anymore. It was what she'd said it would be, a string of metal in a stone trench, men spilling out of doors into a road that had no cover and no way out, fire coming down from above where none of our weapons wanted to point. I heard Pell on the radio, his voice climbing, and then I didn't hear Pell anymore. The box rocked as rounds walked across the armor. The medic beside me was already pulling his bag open and we hadn't even stopped moving. I was frozen, I'll say that plainly, because everything that comes after only means anything if you know I was frozen. 19 years old, 3 weeks in. And the war had finally arrived and I could not make my hands work. I sat in the back of that truck with my rifle across my knees and watched a soldier named Doyle go down in the road 8 feet from my door, and I did not move. The driver's door of the box opened. I want to tell this part exactly, because I have spent a lot of years getting it right in my own head. Marsh did not run out shouting. She did not come up firing. She stepped down out of that truck into the worst place I have ever been, like a woman stepping off a bus, and the first thing she did was stop. 1 full second, maybe 2, standing in the open with the air full of metal, and her head turned left, up, right, up the road, the rooftops, the dead vehicle ahead, the smoke behind, reading it, the whole of it, the way she'd read the map a second too long. And in that second, nothing touched her, and I understood without words that she had been in this exact kind of place before, many times, and had taught herself to be slow in it on purpose, because slow was how you saw. Then she moved, and the slowness was gone. She had Doyle by the drag handle and behind the cistern before I decided to breathe. She put him against the stone, looked at his leg, said something to him I couldn't hear that made him stop screaming, and then she was up against the cistern wall with her rifle, and she fired 3 times into a dark window across the road, deliberate, spaced, and the fire from that window stopped. 3 rounds. She didn't fire again at it. She didn't need to. She'd already turned her eyes to the next thing. That was the first time I saw it, the thing the rest of us never had and never would. She didn't shoot at the fight. She took the fight apart one piece at a time, the way you'd field strip a rifle, each piece set down before she picked up the next. The window, then the doorway, then the man on the low roof who thought the angle hid him. Each one a problem she solved and forgot. No wasted rounds, no spray. Her face the whole time was the face she did reading the map. Mackey was forward, near the dead lead vehicle with what was left of the front of the column, and he was doing what a good hard sergeant does, holding men together by sheer voice, getting weapons up, trying to build a base of fire out of chaos. But he was forward and we were cut, and between him and us was 40 meters of open road that the rooftops owned, and his half of the column was pinned as bad as ours. The relief position we'd come to save was somewhere past all of it, still pinned itself, and now we needed saving worse than they did. The radio was a mess. Pell was hit, alive I learned later, but out, lying in the back of a stricken truck with a sergeant pressing on his chest. There was no one in the column whose job it was to command the column. There was a lieutenant down and a captain on the far side of the city, and a chain that had been cut at the throat of a road in the Sable Quarter at 12 minutes past noon. I heard her voice come up on the platoon net, and it stopped me cold, because it was the calmest thing in all that noise. "All stations, this is Keystone," she said. "Lieutenants down, I have command of the column, acknowledged by element." There was a pause on the net. I could feel it even through the gunfire, the pause of 40 frightened men hearing the meat wagon driver say she had command. And then a voice came back, and another, because frightened men will follow anyone who sounds like they know where the ground is, and she sounded like she had built the ground herself. Keystone, I didn't know it was a call sign until that moment. None of us did. To us she'd never had one. You don't give the driver a call sign. What she did over the next hour I can describe, but I'm not sure I can make you feel. She did not get us out. Getting out was hours away and would cost us. What she did was turn a slaughter into a fight, and a fight is a thing soldiers can live inside. She got us off the road. That was first, and it was everything. The road was the kill zone. The enemy had built the whole thing around the road, so she took us out of it, into the buildings where the rooftops couldn't see straight down, and the fight came back down to ranges and angles that men with rifles could win. She did it by voice and by hand, moving along the line of stalled vehicles in the lulls, never twice the same way, getting the men up and through doorways in twos, telling each pair exactly which corner was theirs and what they were to do if something came around it. She cleared the first 3 buildings herself, going in alone or with whoever was nearest, and I went into the third one behind her because she pointed at me and said my name. She knew my name, she'd known it the whole time, and said, "Aldridge," on me. "You watch the stairs, I'll take the rooms. You only shoot what's on the stairs, nothing else is yours." And the strange thing, the thing I've never been able to explain, is that I could move. I'd been frozen in the truck and now I could move because she had cut my piece of the war down to a size I could hold. The stairs. Only the stairs. I watched the stairs. Twice something came down them and I did what she'd told me, and both times my hands worked, and it was because she'd given me one true small thing instead of the whole roaring impossible all of it. She took the rooms. I heard her in there, not the storm of it you imagine, but a kind of awful tidiness. A door, a pause, 2 shots move, a door, a pause. The whole house cleared in the time it takes to tell it, and she came back down the stairs reloading without looking at her hands and said, "Good, stairs were yours and you held them, now the roof," and we went up. From the roof of that third building you could see the shape of the trap she'd called out in the tent, and you could see the shape of what she was building against it. She was pulling the column off the dead road and stitching it into the buildings on the north side of the reel, building by building, turning a strung-out line of victims into a held block with corners and overlapping fire and a center, and the center was wherever she was standing. She got onto the net to Mackie's half of the column. "Mackie, Keystone?" "Flat, steady. Your half's pinned because you're still on the road. Get them into the buildings on your side, north face, and start working toward me. I'm holding the cistern block. We close the gap and we own the north side of the reel by dark. Acknowledge." There was a silence on the net I will remember until I die. The whole column could hear it. The man who'd called her a meat wagon driver in front of the platoon, who'd told her to drive when he told her to drive, was being told by that same driver where to put his men, and the gunfire didn't stop and the dying didn't stop, and there was no time in all the world for a proud man to be proud. Keystone Mackie. A long breath on the net. "Copy alls, moving into the buildings, we'll come to you." And then lower, a half-second of the net keyed when maybe he didn't mean it to be. "Tell me what you need." "Tell me what you need," from Mackie to the driver. I think that was the moment the column changed its mind about who she was. Not the salute that came later. Soldiers will salute when it's over because it's expected. This was during, when nothing was decided and everyone might die, and a hard old infantry sergeant keyed up and asked her what she needed. The men around me on the roof heard it. I saw it land on them. After that, when she said a thing, they did it the way you do a thing you believe will save your life. The afternoon ground on into evening and the fight got slower and meaner, the way urban fights do, room by room, roof by roof, a war of corners. She held us together through all of it by being everywhere and never hurried. I don't know how she knew where to be. She'd appear at the bad corner just before it went bad, fix it and be gone to the next one. She rotated men off the worst positions before they broke. She got the wounded